Welcome everyone to season 3, episode 1. We're going to start a podcast, the Head in the Game podcast, with one of our very own ambassadors, Katie Burdis, current Women's National League player with Bohemian FC. Thanks, Katie. How are you?
All good. How are you?
No worries, all good. Look, we sort of spoke about last year. We hadn't done many podcasts last year, and I'd been on to you a couple of times and tested the water, see if you'd come on and have a wee chat with us. But we're just delighted that you've agreed to come on and tell a little bit about your story and maybe future plans and little career highlights and stuff like that. So we always just go back to the very start about your childhood and sort of a little bit about your upbringing. So just where you grew up and what your childhood was like, I suppose, Katie.
So I kind of mainly grew up around Laytown. Not many people know it. It's like more people know Batestown area. And kind of I first started off with football when I was about 5 or 6, I think it was. Obviously started off in the boys team because there wasn't many girls teams back then. Kind of with Eastmead. I first started off with just Kilbarrack with my cousin's team, and then I went to Eastmead United, was there for a good few years. Then went on to the girls team. My dad took that over. He was our manager for a good while. Then on to Shells. I was playing with the under-15s Ireland while I was in school. I went to school in Closhnahincha in Batestown. I kind of played for Ireland from under-15s to under-19s, but took that gap at under-16s for when I kind of struggled with my mental health.
Yeah, I suppose, like, even going back right to the start, just, you were probably a small minority of girls who actually had a big interest in football and wanted to play. How did you find stepping into, like, a boys' team? Would you have known even at that age, did it, like, boys and girls mixing with each other on a football team? Did you have any troubles there, or were all the boys good with you?
I think when you first come up, like, the lads are all like, girls can't play football. The usual kind of at that age. But I think once you start training with them and once you mill them in a tackle, they have to show you that respect. You know what I mean? So you kind of gain their respect then after a while, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. I suppose you have to stick up for yourself, no matter who you're coming up against, and no better way to do it than in a tackle. And I suppose, like, you just talked a little bit about your dad taking over the girls' football team. Your dad has a bit of a history in football himself, doesn't he?
Yeah, he played League of Ireland himself. He played with Bows as well. I think there was a Bows A and B team back then. I think it would have been the B team, but yeah, so Bows is in the blood anyways.
Yeah, Bows in the blood, and look, football as well. So, do you know what I mean? You sort of carried it on, and maybe you've taken it to another level. You can slag them off and that. But I suppose you've talked about being in the Ireland setup, and then you sort of stepped away for a little bit. Do you want to just go into a little bit about that yourself? What sort of struggles you had at that time?
So I first was picked for the 15 schools team when I was a year younger. I was only 14, playing up with the older girls, and that was no problem to me. I was fine with that. But then when it came around to my age group, I don't know why, but it just started to the pressure started to get to me a little bit. And it wasn't even just in football. I think it was just in life and school in general, but it obviously took over in football then. And that's when I started to struggle with the panic attacks. I didn't know what they were back then, but the panic attacks, the anxiety, then getting alopecia from the stress. I just had to take some time out of football and focus on just getting back to myself.
Yeah, do you think maybe, just when you're looking back at it now, do you think that you had played with the older age group and then you dropped back into your own age group and people maybe were looking at you saying you've been here before? Was it that sort of pressure, or was it more like yourself putting pressure on yourself, maybe?
Probably a bit of both, but I brought it more on myself.
Right.
I didn't feel that much pressure from the managers or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was more kind of my head making up scenarios as you do when you struggle with anxiety. But yeah, and it just started to affect me on the pitch and affecting how I played.
Yeah, and look, you've probably hid that away from like teammates and coaches and different things like that. How did you cope yourself? I know you took yourself away from football. Did you take yourself away from football completely, or did you just step back from like sort of the international scene?
At the time, I wasn't dealing with it properly because I thought I was having panic attacks. Oh, I thought I was having asthma attacks on the pitch. I didn't know that I was anxiety and that was panic attacks. So I remember against England, it was in Whitehall pitches, and after 20 minutes, I had to come off because I couldn't breathe, and everyone thought it was asthma attacks. I had my inhalers; they were doing nothing for me. I went to the doctors about it. He was saying it's sports-induced asthma. But yeah, obviously the coaches just thought it was asthma. I didn't know what was actually going on. I didn't know what was going on, so I didn't really deal with it at the time.
Yeah.
I just tried to play with it, but I had to keep going down. The game had to keep getting stopped and stuff with Shells as well, not just with Ireland. So I knew there was something not right, and then I started to come into school where I struggled going into classrooms, especially classrooms that were very quiet. I couldn't sit there. And looking back now, I wasn't bold in school, but I was a student that you couldn't get to stop talking. I was always talking to someone. I was always getting moved up the front. But looking back, it was because I couldn't sit in a quiet room.
Yeah.
And I got caught mitching a few times in the toilets, or just not even going into school till a certain time to dodge a certain class if I knew we had an exam, because I knew it was going to be completely silent. And yeah, I just started to take over school then as well. I was going home a lot early, saying that I was sick, and then starting to make myself get sick to go home if my teachers weren't believing me that I was sick and stuff. So I didn't really deal with it properly until I did end up breaking down on the phone to him. I think it was my mum in school one of the days because she couldn't pick me up. And I ended up going to a psychologist, and they're more sports psychologists, but the first 2 or 3 I didn't really get on with. And I remember kind of not really believing in it at the time then. But then I found one that I clicked with. It was a counsellor in Balbriggan, and I just learned how to I got them tools to make it that bit easier.
Yeah. Look, I was going to say, did it come to a point where it was sort of your breaking point, but you've touched on it there yourself, and I suppose it's a sensitive sort of subject to speak about, and then if you're opening up to somebody, you actually, it's like if you're like giving advice to somebody else, it'd be like to keep looking for the right person to speak to, the right person to reach out to, because if you don't click with somebody, it's you don't give up. You just keep an open mind about it and keep looking for that connection, because it's obviously, it's obviously helped you massively. And did you find like the process of going through that did you keep that into yourself, or were you able to confide in a few family members like your mum and dad maybe?
At the time, yeah, it was just my mum and my dad that I kind of told about it. Obviously at the time I was a bit embarrassed about it, which I shouldn't have been, and nobody should be embarrassed about it. But there was 2 teachers in school as well that knew about it because they helped me a lot. I'll give them a shout out, Marshall Strack and Lillian Ross. I still keep in contact with them today.
That's brilliant.
They were brilliant to me. Anytime I was getting overwhelmed or needed to leave class, they were there for me, and they had my back with a lot of teachers as well, because teachers were kind of saying to them she's not doing the work, she's not coming to my class, she's not stopped talking in my class. and they kind of had my back since day one when I actually opened up to them. So I owe them a lot as well for helping me through school.
Yeah, and that's it. That's sort of a point we try and make with Head in the Game. Like you just don't know what somebody's going through. So, and exactly on that point, I'm sure the teachers couldn't understand. Like they probably thought you're a problem for them, whereas they didn't understand the full story. And it's the likes of yourself who's come forward and spoke about your problems that have paved the way for younger girls coming up that might have similar issues, that they'll be able to speak about it openly and not be ashamed of having certain issues like that, because it's not a shameful thing. I think it's probably been stigmatized a little bit where you're different or you might be an outsider in certain circumstances, whereas now it's the whole Head in the Game's trying to normalize things like that and get people talking, because like you said, you've found someone you're able to talk to, and even opening up to one person probably, was a bit of a domino effect. You're able to say little bits and pieces to other people, and even your two school teachers, and it's just testament to them and yourself that you've kept in contact with them, which is brilliant in itself. Like, and that's it. The relationships you create can last a lifetime, and I suppose school should be one of the happiest times of your life, and you've obviously struggled with that, but it's good to see that you've come out the other side of it.
Yeah, and one thing I'd say is as well with speaking up, if I kept that to myself all throughout school, I don't think I would have finished school, because they made a lot of adjustments for me. When I did speak to them about it, like for the Leaving Cert, I was in a separate exam centre. I wasn't in the classroom. Whereas for my junior cert, when I didn't have anybody that I was struggling, I was in the classroom with this whole class. And I'd say if you look back on the sign-out sheets, I'm the first name on every single one just to get out of that classroom. I didn't even finish half of my exams. So just speaking to them helped me a lot with my Leaving Cert. I didn't do amazing in my Leaving Cert, but I done it. And I was happy that I stuck out school and actually done it.
Yeah, and that's another an achievement in itself, that you're able to do the Leaving Cert, and fair play to the school or the teachers who have to organise that, because I'm sure running up to the junior cert, it was a dread and another anxious time for you. Like even the thoughts of going through the exam and the exam hall and everything that sort of triggered your anxiety at the time. So yeah, look, that's exactly about opening up, and it helped. It helped massively. Just moving on with your, how did you find then integrating back into football? Was it small steps? I know, we all know you've got to the highest level in this country again, which is amazing. But how did you find getting back in? Were you just going back in training for a wee while and mixing in, or did you just get straight back into it? How did you cope with that?
I kind of eased myself back in. There were certain, if I couldn't feel up to go and train, and I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And it was mainly when I moved, because I moved to DLR. It was UCD back then when I moved from Shells. But Derek was one of the coaches there, and he was brilliant with me. I always spoke to him when I was feeling anxious, especially before games or anything. And he kind of knew in a game, he could see if I was a bit off or starting to feel a bit nervous. He'd encourage me and be shouting stuff, even random things that I probably wouldn't have even got the ball. And he'd be shouting, "Great run," all this, and I done nothing. But there's stuff that stick in your head and kind of build up your confidence a little bit when you do feel a bit down. So he was brilliant as well. And then Graham Kelly as well when he came in, and John Sullivan.
Yeah,
they were brilliant with me too. Johnny McLean. They all kind of, Graham and Solo especially, if I wasn't coming to training, they'd be ringing me asking, "Is everything all right?" Checking in, trying their best to get me to training, because when you're actually there, you do enjoy it, because you're with all the girls having the laugh. You're not sitting at home kind of on your own. But there was certain periods where I did go through with UCD as well, wanting to quit again when I went through kind of a rough patch. with injuries and the kind of alopecia with my hair.
Yeah, and that's it. Like, it's the relationships you build up, and I suppose to sort of say that, you know, you remember people more for how they made you feel than something they said or did, and at least you're able to lean on them, which was amazing. And I know Graham's done a bit of work with ourselves, and he's helped us out in a few different projects and videos we had. So yeah, he's a top man. And like the rest of them, you know, knowing John Sullivan personally and the way he walks and operates, and he's very personal. Like, he's an intense person, but you know, he puts the person first of all the time. So another top man, and there was a lot of good people around that club, and it was good that you had the supports there. And you moved on then last season, and you moved on to Bose. And how did you find the transition there? Did you find the same sort of support networks you would have had at DLO?
Yeah, because I had Sean Bourne as a coach at 16s Ireland when I was mainly struggling, and I also had him in Foss. I done the FAI football course up in Ringsend, so I had Sean. He was aware of my anxiety and kind of the panic attacks and stuff like that. Same with Pat Tretty. So I wasn't going in where they hadn't a clue. So, and I knew a good few of the girls as well. Obviously, one of my good friends, Kira, moved at the same time as me, and she's aware of it, and she's been brilliant with me as well. She helps me a lot. So definitely, yeah, I felt it with all the girls and with all of the management.
Yeah, it's good that, you know, you feel comfortable there, and you've obviously got your family to back you up, and sort of coming out and doing little bits and pieces of the interviews. Like, even, and we sort of had a chat before this, and some of your teammates now, you were saying, mightn't even realise the sort of situations you'd be in, but like little things like that can be an eye opener. And it, like, for me, knowing some of the players that I've played with along the years, I'm sure they've had similar issues, and maybe if you had known about it, it would have been easier for them along the way. But it's very brave and courageous of you to come out and speak about it, because I know it can't be easy to talk about things that you've gone through and different situations. So look, I was just going to say, if you had any advice for any young girls, or even girls your own age or older, if you had any advice for them, just from the experiences you've had along the way.
My main piece of advice would be to speak to someone when you're going through it. You don't really see an end to it. You think you can take on, like, it's my problems, why should I bother anybody else? But if you think you're strong enough to take on, imagine how much easier it'll be with one other person. Even if it's your family members you have to go speak to, like, a problem shared is a problem halved. And I've only learned that myself since I properly went to counselling. You get a lot of tools that help you along the way. And as well, like, speaking up, like I said in school, people can make, like, alterations for you, alternatives, for you. So I just think it's so much easier when you speak up. I know it's cliche to say, but a problem shared is a problem halved.
Yeah, and I suppose the proof's in the pudding, like the amount of people that's come out and said that talking's helped them, and you know, it's definitely the way forward for people, and hopefully it's just becoming a bit more normalized. I know, like, when I was growing up, people would be talking about counsellors and different things like that, and you think they were off the wall, but now, you know, you realise how important it is to have in society, and especially in the times we're in the minute. So look, I don't want to keep you too long either, but we usually finish on a bit of a good note, and we usually just ask someone what was the highlight of the footballing career so far to date. I know you've only just recently started your career, and you've plenty left, but I suppose one of the highlights of your career so far, or if you have a couple of them.
My main one would probably be in the Euros with the 19s, the qualifiers over in Spain. That was brilliant for me. I kind of had my confidence back a bit, whereas in previous years I struggled a lot with confidence, so I wasn't too mad of going into the camps, but I felt confident in myself and I was just enjoying it with the girls. And another one for me would be back when I made my debut for Ireland. It was at under 15s over in England. I think it was in front of like a crowd of 2,000. And although we lost the match like 7-0, but I was marking Georgia Samway, who's with England now. And yeah, I just think I learned so much from that game.
Yeah, and them experiences, you know, you can't take them away from you. And to represent your country is amazing. Like, so you've had a great career so far, and look, everyone ahead in the game is wishing you the best of luck in the rest of your career. But we just want to thank you as well for coming on and having a chat with us. And you've been a massive help since you've stepped in as ambassador, and you know it's not gone unnoticed. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks very much, and thanks for having me on board as an ambassador. Hopefully, if my story just helps one person, that's all I'm looking to do.
Yeah, look, I'm sure it'll help plenty of people along the way. And look, it's a very interesting one, and we just want to thank you once again for coming on and having a chat with us.
Yeah, no, thanks very much for having me on, Stefan. Appreciate it.
No worries.